Welcome everyone. So another episode of Real Talk. This time I'm here with Justine to talk about some really interesting facts that we've discovered around sharing information with your partner about having treatment. So unfortunately Miranda's away. She's looking after the kids today because we have one toddler who's down and out with a winter vomiting bug. It's exactly as bad as it sounds. But today we're going to talk to Justine a little bit about what she's discovered around sharing treatments with your partner.
Okay, so we've recently conducted a survey. So I'm the marketing manager at Skinbeaver, and what was really interesting is when we were talking to the customer experience girls in the clinic, they were saying that actually a lot of people don't tell their partners that they're having treatment, and could that be one of like the biggest secrets in aesthetics? That's how I sort of pitched it when I sort of heard that. And then I thought, well, actually, let's get some nice data around that. How many people don't actually tell their partners? And we surveyed nearly 1,000 people who have had treatment, and we find that 1 in 4 people actually don't tell their partners that they're having treatment, which I think is quite a big stat, really. Mm-hmm. And I think it surprised me more than anything.
I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised it's so high, it's so low, because my impression from talking to clients over the years is that I would have thought maybe 50% of people didn't. There's also another grey area there, which is the people who tell them a little bit and not the whole picture.
I'm also guilty of that.
So, because that's a lot easier. I just had a little tiny thing done, not, everything. So that's quite common. So interesting. What about, a very small number of people actually tell their partners, but at the same time, there's some other interesting data in there that you've discovered, which is helpful in terms of interpreting the bigger picture.
Yeah, so in general, in terms of if we dive into the particular partners issue, 40% of people surveyed believed that their partner actually said that they wouldn't need it. So maybe there's more of an understanding around what it is. It's not just, on the outside, all about the outside. It's actually how that person is making them feel from having treatment. So maybe there should be a bit of a bigger understanding around that.
So that's interesting. So your partner thinks you don't need it. You clearly disagree, and you have a treatment anyway. I actually think from all the years I've sitting with patients, and sometimes they come in with their partners, that there's a type of partner who doesn't think that their partner needs it but supports them having it anyway, who's always my hero. Like, I always think that's like, you're a keeper.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't think you need it, which is what you'd like to be told, and then he's still backing you when you have it. So I like those guys. Then there's another category which are I'm dead against it, and if I find out, there'll be trouble. Like, that's not a particularly good category. There are the ones who are completely like, I'm not even interested in this topic, but I'll drive you here. They're fine as well. And actually the worst category are, and I've only had this very few times, which is the partner almost brings the partner to have their face fixed like it's a broken car. And it's like, can you do anything about this? So that is, and obviously I couldn't treat someone in that scenario. And in fact, I very awkwardly have refused people at least twice. I can remember thinking, this isn't, unless I can prove a psychological benefit for the patient, there's no point. It's not a broken car. Like, I can't fix it for you. I can only fix it for the person whose face it is. So that's awkward. So wherever you are on the spectrum of things, when you're thinking about this discussion with your partner, just make sure you're not on that end of the spectrum, because that needs some boundaries.
But what about the people who, so they bring the partners in and they're happy for them to have treatment. They say that they don't need it, but surely, what would be the psychology if somebody said, oh, well, yeah, I can see why you would want that done? Is there those camp?
Oh, right. So they kind of agree that there's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I think that could just be an objective thing. I mean, if you had a bump on your nose and you don't like it, and someone says, yeah, like, there is a bump on your nose, that's inoffensive. Are you saying, but they're also implying that it's a problem? Like,
possibly. Oh, yeah. In fact, I know that you treated the couple with the rhinoplasty, and they both come in and had the treatment together. What was their sort of story?
They had a really lovely relationship, to be honest. They were both like happy and giggly and kind of with each other, very affectionate, but also there was a mutual understanding of the problem without either one of them thinking the other one had anything wrong with their nose, if you know what I mean. It was like, yeah, we both don't like our bumps. We're both here to get our bumps fixed, but we're not doing it so the other one will love us. We're just doing it because we both want our bumps gone. I think that's the nice sort of happy medium of the two, is that you basically are backing the person's need to have it done, rather than saying that their face for you needs to be fixed. That's the ideal scenario, and I'd say most people are closer to that. I think with your partner generally as well, something like that is that they obviously did meet you that way, so that you kind of fall in love with someone the way that they are when you meet them. Hopefully that's how it stays. I don't think you then try and fix them. I'm sure there are some people like that, but I think it's rare.
Yeah. What was interesting was actually the people who do tell their partners that they're having treatment, a third of those partners actually disagree with them having it done altogether. They just completely don't understand it.
Well, I can share a story from my own perspective long before I got into aesthetics, which is I don't think men understand beauty at all. I honestly think they know it when they see it, but they know nothing beyond that. So it's like, what I basically was called out by Miranda years before I was even in medical school, because we've been together since I was 18, 19. And I remember getting frustrated that we couldn't go to B&Q, I think it was, without her putting makeup on. And I made some, I'm sure this happened a lot of times, like you look the same with or without it, doesn't really make that much difference, which I think a lot of men say to their partners. And I can't remember when it was, at some point, whatever, she called me out on it, because I think I said something similar, and she said, but you say that, but you do only compliment me when I've got makeup on. And I was like, it just hit me. I was like, is that true? Because I'm not consciously thinking about it. I'm just, what's happening is they've put some effort in, and you think, that looks nice, and you say something, but you don't say it when they've just rolled out of bed with a hangover. Like, it's different. And that is unfortunately the realm that women have learned to control their appearance in a way that most men either don't feel the social pressure to, or they're not interested in. And they're oblivious to it. Oblivious is the right word. Yeah. So when a woman wants to, particularly women, obviously men do these things as well, but when they want to change their appearance, they know what they're talking about, because they've been doing it since they were 12. Normally their makeup starts around that age. They've been constantly honing and fine-tuning things, and men don't. Like, they grow up doing other things, so they don't understand. They often, what I have learned from actually one of our doctors who had a treatment, and she knew her partner wouldn't know that she had something done, but he did notice immediately. He said, you look nice. And she was like, it's worked. Yeah. I'm really pleased I've done it. And that's the ideal, which is, because he wouldn't say you need to go and get that fixed so that you look nice. They wouldn't know one way or the other, but when it looks better, they do notice. But it's the feeling they get, rather than I see you've changed your cheeks. It's just like, oh, you look good. That's
really interesting, because I actually have had treatments where I have told Dan, my husband, or I haven't. I've chosen not to tell him, because I'm thinking if he knew the reaction of, such as having my lips treated, he would probably have a negative reaction to it. But when I have had it done, he then hasn't even noticed. Mm-hmm. But he would compliment me on how nice I looked or whatever. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
That's a sign of a good treatment, actually, is that you can't tell what's changed. It looks better, and people feel it. They don't actually notice the detail. And
he does react to different treatments in different ways. I think with the lips, there's obviously the whole duck pouty lips that he doesn't have in you, that he definitely doesn't want me to go down, and neither do I. But then there's the Botox, where he does actually quite like the result of that and does approve of me having it done, which is a weird scenario to be in.
But I bet he had to see the results before he approved. Because the results are always different to the stereotype, because you're still you in all your normal ways, and then you just look slightly better. Whereas some people, I think a lot of men clash with the idea of, now my wife's having Botox. Yeah. That feels different. So, this is another great tip I had from one of my patients who said the best time to tell your partner is immediately after the compliment. So at that moment, it's like, oh, you're looking nice. I've had Botox. And then it's hard to come back from that.
So I like that. But there are certain things that I've not told him that I've had. But it's weird, because, so I was recently in this scenario where, this is not cosmetic treatments. I went and bought a coat. So I had my birthday money. I really needed a coat to go and walk the dog and whatnot. It was cold outside. I wanted a nice puffer jacket. They're all the rage right now. Went and bought this coat, got home. Dan didn't like it. And that was it. I didn't want it anymore. And when I tell people or tell friends, they'd be like, why does it matter what Dan thinks? But it really does matter to me what Dan thinks. Like, because that is, every time I'd put that, I wouldn't want to put it on because he would be thinking that I don't really like you in that. Whereas I am always trying to make him attracted to me.
Yeah. Well, also you want to feel attractive yourself around him, and that's an element of doubt there. I mean, because I think the same might be true possibly even if someone other than Dan had said I don't like the coat. Like it can still sow a seed of doubt.
Yeah, as soon as I put that on, I would be doubting myself. Yeah, I mean, when I dug further, it was because there was kids at school, because he's a teacher, kids at school who was wearing similar kind of coats, and obviously I can understand now why you wouldn't want me in that coat. But no, I did. I returned the coat and I bought a different one because I needed his approval on what I looked like.
Yeah, and that leads me to think about another sad scenario, which is the partner who doesn't tell that they're going to have a treatment, has the treatment, and then the partner notices or finds out, and then they sometimes are cross that haven't been told, and they declare that they don't like the treatment.
Yeah,
that's quite sad. I've had a couple of those over the years who, because they were against it, they're obviously naturally, which is why this ninja move of admitting that you've had a treatment straight after a compliment is quite clever, because then they've already blessed it in a way.
Yeah.
So, but if they find out a different route, then it's sometimes, I think naturally, like you didn't want it to happen, they did it anyway, you feel out of control. So it's like, well, I'm going to say I don't like that anyway. That's sad, because then they're actually, they don't get anything then, because then they have that element of doubt. So that occasionally partners do that to each other, which is that's on the less happy side of the spectrum.
Yeah,
I would say most partners, I think, are on the neutral to positive side. I think most are not. We've got a stat on that, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, 1 in 5 people say that their partner just wouldn't even understand as well.
So not understanding or totally against?
Totally against is the third. A third of partners totally disagree. A third
are totally against, yeah. It would be really interesting, you guys watching, if you could share a little bit about why you think your partners are totally against, because I think it's for different reasons. I've often considered it. The other interesting pattern I've noticed over the years is children of people who have treatments also have different opinions. So the young boys of their mums don't want their mums to have treatment, whereas young girls like it often. And daughters often like their mums having treatment, whereas sons when they're older as well. So there's something, and it could be because of this lack of understanding of what it is to control your appearance, which is different for most women than it is for most men. Could be something tied in with this, like either a lack of empathy or some fear of the person kind of drifting off in a way that you don't understand and becoming something else. I'm not sure, but it'd be interesting if you've got any views on why you think your partners, either sons or daughters, are either for or against, and if you can kind of understand why they have those opinions, it'd be really useful and interesting to hear about that.
I mean, I know I've got a friend he's one of my best friends, but he is completely against it, and I can't get through to him why. Even like, obviously I've got everything that you tell me about treatments and why people have treatments. I've got all their stories as well that you've told me about clients coming in, and there was that lady who was the 8-year-old who every time she looked in the mirror she'd just see all the her past 10 years she'd gone through a lot of grief, losing her, I think it was a mum and a partner, and then to have that treatment meant that when she was looking in the mirror that it was eliminating all that grief. And I would explain these stories to him, but it just doesn't get through at all. Completely no understanding of it. Yeah,
people do have very very interesting ways that they understand this treatment. I've certainly had one which is but you're going to get old anyway.
Yeah,
so that was one that I found it took me by surprise, because I don't know why. It's nothing that it never crossed my mind that you would dismiss anything that might make you look and feel better in the short term, because ultimately it's futile. Because in my mind that immediately applies to everything. It's like, well, we're going to die, so there's no point buying a new car. You're going to die anyway, so it didn't make sense, but it kind of took me out of the blue. But some people feel that with your appearance, like, what's the point? And I think it's partly because they think of it only as trying to look younger, which actually isn't true. No. So most people are not actually trying to look younger. They're trying to maintain themselves at the age that they're at, or they're beautifying, but maintenance is a key word. So they're not actually trying to look 25, because you're right, that is a futile exercise. You will not look 25 for the rest of your life, but you could look good and feel confident for the vast majority of that time. So it depends on where they attach these treatments in terms of the purpose in their mind. So if it is to look young forever, then you're right, you're off to a loser. But there are many other reasons why people have treatments. So it might be, but some people find it hard to express as well. I don't know. It sounds like you got to that point where you were actually not actually getting.
I wasn't getting
any
anywhere.
Detail
there
out.
was a barrier, and I wasn't getting anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know anyone else who, or have you've had this experience with your partner as well, which is that sometimes you were saying before, sometimes you have and sometimes you haven't. What are your thoughts around why you would share it and why you wouldn't? Or
partly because I don't think he would notice. So why does he even need to know? 2, because I think he would think I'm going to get carried away. I think that's his worry. That's his main concern. Is once I have one thing done, I might, then start not looking like myself and augmenting myself in a way that scares him. And get carried away, which I know that I wouldn't, but maybe I am thinking that he thinks that, because he did, like I say, approve. It's a terrible word. He's not like a dictator or anything, but he did like some of my treatments, but he hasn't liked others. So I've only had 3, but I've chosen to not tell him. So such as Botox. I've had Botox, and I told him about that because that was my first treatment. Maybe he was a little bit nervous, wanted to gauge how he thought about it. The second one, lips, he really doesn't like, mainly because of when I got home, the amount of swelling. I think that scared him and put him off instantly. Whereas probably like a week or so later, I would argue the fact that he probably wouldn't have noticed, definitely, because he never really looked at me in a way that would say, I really don't like that about you now, or he'd still compliment me in ways. And then I had tear troughs done as well, and but I didn't tell him about that.
Yeah. Because
of my fear of him thinking that I'm going to get carried away, definitely.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. I think that's definitely part of what's behind it, which is your partner's going off on this path, and you don't know where it leads, because you know nothing about this area anyway. You just know that they're going to start to look different. Yeah. So it's semi-permanent. So there's a fear of, will they turn themselves into someone who I didn't sign up to being with, almost. Yeah, so that's interesting.
I think he knows my addictive personality though as well, so I can get addicted to things, and maybe there's a fear of him of thinking, well, once I've started it, I'll always not never stop, as in I'll continue going with treatments, as in continuously throughout my life, to a point where I feel like I am dependent on it as well. I think there's a fear around that as well, because he obviously thinks I am beautiful enough as it is, so why would I need it?
Yeah, or at least I'm just thinking about that in terms of relationship. Although I might, from a self-centered point of view, I might like my partner to have the freedom not to have to care about makeup.
Yeah.
So I can just go off to B&Q without having to worry about it.
Yeah.
So there is a lack of freedom once something really works. Like now you are essentially committed to it because you're so much happier with it.
Yeah.
That's not, as long as you're happy with it, you could justify it. But if they don't perceive the extra happiness, then it's just it's a chain without any benefit. I think there's something with that with partners. But it boils down once again to the empathy thing. And you need to, I would say as a challenge to partners, is you need to think a little bit about what it's like in your partner's shoes, because it is different. And it may not be that it's a male-female thing. If you've got a bump on your nose that you're not, that you think about constantly, and someone else thinks it's nothing, well, it's not their bump, So there is an element of trying to put yourselves in their position.
Yeah.
But also, likewise, you should try and put yourself in your partner's position and try and understand exactly what they're afraid of, because you can reassure them. I think it's useful knowing that he's afraid you're going to go off become obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Because as much as you may be like that in some other domain, like it's a very different thing having injections all the time, and also you're in a company that constantly talk about the downsides and the complications and being overtreated. So he would probably be reassurable if you had those discussions in a way that you might not, because I don't think most partners probably have the discussion. They probably just get the resistance. Like there's never a discussion of what are you afraid of, because at the bottom of it, it's probably something reasonable. It's probably worth talking about.
Yeah. We did survey we did survey in terms of if you didn't tell specific people, so not necessarily your partner, anybody, why you're not having treatment. And the top answer that came out was, it's none of their business. So I really like that one for the sassiness of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know if you get that in terms of the clients that are coming in. Are they...
Well, that's one of the most interesting things, actually, is that sometimes the stereotype of our industry, the negative stereotype, is that people are doing it for other people's approval. And the vast majority of my clients are the total opposite. It's almost like this is actually one of the few things I do just for myself. Like, it's actually specifically not for anyone else, in a way that all the other things I have to do. This is just to make me feel ready for life and prepared for it. So I always thought there's a cruel irony in that, the fact that it's actually that the stereotype is the opposite of reality, and that people are actually doing it for themselves. And I think that's what that comment reflects, which is, this is one of the most independent decisions I've ever made, even though people think I'm doing it so that other people will like me. It's not. It's because I want to feel great in my skin. So then I think that's what that data supports, which is quite an independent decision for most people, which is nice.
I always think about my auntie as well. It's not aesthetic treatment. She just goes and has her nails done, but she is kind of sassy about it. And it's like, this is my time. This is my week. Like, her nail technician even tells her that she doesn't need to come in as often as she needs to, because like they don't come off as easy or whatever. She could go 3 weeks, but she comes in every 2 weeks and she said, no, I'm not waiting for 3 weeks. This is my time. This is every 2 weeks. This is my little thing for myself that perks me up and makes me feel better about myself. And I think it's a similar sort of mindset on that.
Yeah.
But there is, in terms of, on the other side, 41% of people chose not to tell people because of negative reactions. So whether they thought that people would think they're vain or they'd judge me. So that's quite a high percentage, which I thought I did think it would be higher than 41%, but most people would say that it's none of their business. But yeah.
I think if you ask, obviously these people are following our page, so they're already, I think if you ask the general public, that sense of fear of being judged is high on people's lists. Which is also another irony, because they don't realize that actually the only reason that they're not having treatment is because they're worried about what other people think. Rather than
yeah.
So it's like people think, oh, you're only having treatment because you're worried about what people think. Well, actually, that's the main reason people don't have treatment. Yeah. Which is a complete flip on what people are thinking. But there's definitely something on fear of being judged and identity, because Botox is particularly, or anything, all these procedures have such a strong brand that you then have to associate that with yourself. What does it mean to your identity? And what that really means is, what do you think people will think of you if you're the kind of person who has lip filler or whatever it is, regardless of what you look like. So that's the interesting thing, is you can have the smallest, most subtle treatment, but you still have become the kind of person who has lip filler. And for some people that means, oh, that's great, you're on the front foot and you're independent minded and you maintain yourself and you've got enough money to do it and you're looking after yourself, and they think great. And for other people it's associated with insecurity and vanity, and the reality is, obviously, as we know, it's more complex for everyone, but I think those are the associations people, and it depends on what your experience is, because some people have totally different associations. As I say, it can be positive or negative, and it depends what your friends said and that overheard conversation that you had heard once that make these connotations which may or may not be true.
I think there's something in the fact, though, that our industry is just surrounded by negative press all the time. You don't actually hear those positive stories very often, apart from maybe a few before and after transformational treatments, in terms of if Weight Watchers did a weight loss. But actually the press, it's all around negativity, which then I think not only are we then battling the stigma against the industry, but obviously all clients are as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's definitely that stigma causes a friction for everyone. And I remember it being broken in my own mind in the early days when we started working, was that when Miranda would call to ask clients how they were after treatment, often at the point of taking the phone call, they were doing something they hadn't done for a long time. So I'm actually buying, a new wardrobe because I feel great about myself, and that was when it first started to dawn on me that this isn't really about what you look like. It's about how you feel, so that you actually do more things with your life. And it's a very hard thing to explain, because obviously the industry focuses on before and afters. So you can constantly show millions of before and afters, and most people, if it's not your face, you think, well, yeah, I can see there's a difference, but you don't realize the real difference is actually in that person who feels differently, who's behaving differently, who's actually having a different life because of that one small treatment that you can't really tell the difference on. So it is interesting. Any other stats? Have we covered all the...
No, we've covered all of them. I think it was a really interesting study.
Yeah. So once again, if you have resonated with any of this, if you tag a friend who might be interested, if you have a partner who disagrees and you want to share exactly why they disagree, or a partner who really backs you up and supports you doing this, we'd love to hear those stories. But share some of what you think about this topic, and if you think it's interesting, share it or tag a friend who might be interested, and we will talk more about it, I'm sure, in the future. I'm sure Miranda will be back next week to talk more about other interesting topics, and of course keep the questions coming in as well. Thank you very much, Justine.
Thank you.